Now is the time to protect your money. Not from scammers, not from fraud, but from a system which is designed to slowly bleed your hard-earned wealth out of your pocket. House prices in the UK jumped nearly 5% last year. Interest rates hit their highest point in 15 years. So why didn't the market collapse like everyone predicted? The answer is going to shock you, and what's coming next could change everything for British homebuyers. Right now, the UK property market is caught in the middle of something unprecedented. Rates have been slashed twice since August, dropping from that peak of 5.25% down to 4%. Sounds like good news, right? But here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Mortgage rates are still sitting around 5% for most buyers, and millions of homeowners haven't felt the pain yet. They're still on old fixed deals from when rates were rock bottom. That's about to change. Before we dive deeper into this mess, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Property Reporter. We're bringing you the latest UK property and housing news that actually matters, cutting through the noise to show you what's really happening in the market. Let's rewind to understand how we got here. Back in late 2021, you could get a mortgage for under 2%. The Bank of England's base rate was practically nothing. Then inflation exploded. Energy prices went through the roof. The cost of everything from bread to petrol skyrocketed. The Bank of England panicked and started hiking rates aggressively. Within 18 months, rates went from nearly 0 to 5.25%. It was one of the fastest rate hiking cycles in British history. Every economist, every property expert, every financial journalist made the same prediction. House prices were going to crash. Some forecasts showed falls of 10%, even 15%. Estate agents braced for disaster. Sellers held off listing their homes. The market was supposed to freeze, then collapse. Except that's not what happened. Prices barely flinched. They stumbled slightly in late 2022, dropped maybe 5% in some areas, then started climbing again. By the end of 2024, prices were higher than they'd been at the previous peak. The crash everyone predicted never came. But there's another storm brewing right now that nobody saw coming, and it's creating absolute chaos in the market. April 2025 marked a massive shift in stamp duty rules, and the deadline triggered a buying frenzy unlike anything we've seen in years. Here's what changed. Before April, first-time buyers paid zero stamp duty on properties up to £425,000. That threshold just dropped to £300,000. If you're buying a £400,000 home, you went from paying nothing in tax to paying £5,000 overnight. For regular buyers, the tax-free threshold dropped from £250,000 all the way back down to £125,000. That's an extra £2,500 in tax for anyone buying an average-priced home. March 2025 saw an absolute scramble. Buyers were desperately trying to complete purchases before the deadline. Estate agents were working around the clock. Solicitors were overwhelmed. Everyone wanted to beat the tax increase. Nationwide predicted exactly this would happen. They said we'd see a massive spike in March, then a corresponding slump for 6 months after. That's exactly what's playing out right now. The property market is experiencing whiplash. Sales are down. Buyers who missed the deadline are sitting on the sidelines, wondering if they should wait for prices to fall now that fewer people can afford to buy. So let's tackle the question everyone's been asking. Why didn't house prices crash when interest rates went up? The answer is complicated, but it comes down to 3 massive factors that most people completely missed. First, there's simply not enough housing. Britain has a chronic supply shortage. Successive governments have promised to build 300,000 homes per year. They've never hit that target. Not even close. When there aren't enough homes for the number of people who want to buy them, prices stay high no matter what happens with interest rates. It's basic economics, but it's the most important piece of the puzzle. Second, there's a huge group of people who aren't affected by interest rates at all. This is the part that shocked researchers. More than half of UK homeowners now own their property outright with no mortgage. That shift happened around 2023. These people accumulated massive savings during the pandemic when they couldn't spend money on holidays, restaurants, or entertainment. They're sitting on cash. When they want to buy a bigger house or a second property, They're not worried about mortgage rates. They're paying in cash or putting down enormous deposits. This group has kept the market alive. Third, the wealthy got significantly wealthier during and after the pandemic. This is the uncomfortable truth. While ordinary families struggled with the cost of living crisis, people with assets saw their wealth explode. They're buying property as investments. They're outbidding first-time buyers. They're turning homes into rental properties. Their demand for assets, including houses, has kept prices elevated even as affordability for regular people has collapsed. Here's where it gets really dark for anyone trying to get on the property ladder. The average UK house price is now sitting around £270,000, though in some areas it's already past £290,000. First-time buyers in most of the country need a deposit of at least £27,000 for a 10% deposit, and that's if they can even find something at that price. In London and the South East, you're looking at needing £50,000 or more just for the deposit. For someone earning the median UK salary of around £34,000, saving that deposit would take years, maybe a decade, and that's assuming house prices don't keep rising while they save. But they will keep rising. Meanwhile, rents have absolutely exploded. Private rents went up 9.1% in the last year alone. That's one of the biggest annual increases ever recorded. Young people are stuck paying record rents, which makes it nearly impossible to save for a deposit, which means they stay renting forever. Which means landlords can keep pushing rents higher because demand is insane. It's a vicious cycle, and there's no escape for millions of people. Here's something that's flying under the radar, but it's absolutely crucial. 3/4 of UK mortgages are on fixed rates. That sounds boring, but it's actually terrifying. Here's why. When the Bank of England started hiking rates in 2021, most homeowners didn't feel it immediately. They were locked into cheap fixed-rate deals from the pandemic era. Some are still on rates below 2%, but those deals are ending. The Bank of England estimates that 4.4 million households, nearly half of all mortgage holders, still need to remortgage onto higher rates between now and the end of 2027. When they do, their monthly payments are going to jump dramatically. We're talking about increases of £200, £300, even £500 per month for some families. That pain is still coming. The mortgage crisis hasn't even fully hit yet. So what's actually going to happen in 2025 and 2026? The forecasts are all over the place, but there are some clear trends emerging. Most major lenders and property analysts are predicting further house price growth of between 2% and 4% this year. That might not sound like much, but it means prices are going higher, not lower. For first-time buyers already struggling, that's devastating news. Every month they wait, homes become less affordable. Interest rates are expected to keep falling throughout 2025. The Bank of England has already cut twice, and markets are pricing in more cuts to come. Rates could end the year somewhere between 3.5% and 4%. That should help with affordability, but here's the catch. When rates fall, it tends to push house prices up because more people can suddenly afford to borrow. It's a double-edged sword. Inflation is slowly coming back down toward the Bank of England's 2% target. It's currently hovering between 2.8% and 3%, depending on which measure you look at. That's good news for rate cuts, but it also means the cost of living crisis isn't going away anytime soon. People are still being squeezed, wages aren't keeping up. The dream of home ownership is slipping further away for millions. But here's where the story gets really interesting. The UK property market isn't one market. It's dozens of different markets, and they're moving in completely opposite directions. Northern cities are absolutely booming. Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool. These places are seeing strong, consistent price growth of 2% to 3% or more. Why? Because they're still relatively affordable compared to the south. Young professionals are moving there for jobs. Investors are piling in because rental yields are better. There's regeneration happening. Transport links are improving. These cities are on the rise. London and the South East are a completely different story. Price growth has basically stalled. In some parts of London, prices are actually falling. The average time it takes to sell a property in London has jumped 20% compared to last year. It's now taking 45 days on average to find a buyer. That's slow. Sellers are getting nervous. Properties are sitting on the market longer. The problem is simple. Prices in London and the South East are already so astronomically high that even with rate cuts, most people just can't afford to buy. A first-time buyer in London needs a household income of well over £100,000 to afford an average home. That's completely unrealistic for the vast majority of people. The market there is running out of buyers. This regional divide is only going to get wider. If you're a first-time buyer looking at London or anywhere in the South East, you're essentially priced out unless you have significant family wealth. The stamp duty changes hit these areas hardest because property prices are already above the new thresholds. Meanwhile, if you're in Manchester or Leeds, the market is still moving. It's tough, but it's not impossible. The geography of opportunity in Britain is shifting, and it's shifting fast. Now let's talk about something that's causing absolute panic among renters. Landlords are threatening to leave the market in droves, and if they actually do it, the rental crisis is going to get so much worse. Here's what's happening. The government increased the stamp duty surcharge on additional properties from 3% to 5% back in October 2024. Then, from April 2025, landlords buying properties between £125,000 and £250,000 face an extra 2% charge on top of everything else. Buy-to-let is becoming significantly more expensive from a tax perspective. Landlords are also dealing with higher mortgage rates, stricter regulations, and political pressure. Many are looking at their portfolios and thinking, it's not worth it anymore. If landlords start selling up, where does that leave renters? In theory, it could mean more properties come onto the market for first-time buyers. But in reality, most of those properties will be snapped up by wealthier buyers or other investors. Meanwhile, the rental supply will shrink. Fewer rental properties means even more competition for what's left. That means rents will keep climbing. Experts are warning that any increase in costs for landlords will be passed directly to tenants. It's already happening. Rents have never been higher, and there's no sign of them coming down. For the millions of people in Generation Rent, this is a nightmare scenario. They're already spending 40%, sometimes 50% of their income on rent. If rents keep rising, saving for a deposit becomes literally impossible. There's a really uncomfortable truth at the heart of all this that nobody wants to talk about. The UK housing market is designed to benefit people who already own property, and it punishes everyone else. If you're a homeowner, especially if you're mortgage-free or you bought years ago when prices were lower, rising house prices feel great. Your wealth is increasing. You feel richer. You can borrow against your home if you need to. You have security. But if you're young, if you're renting, if you don't have wealthy parents who can help with a deposit, rising house prices are a disaster. They represent a lifetime of financial struggle. They mean you'll never own your own home. They mean you'll be at the mercy of landlords forever. They mean you can't build wealth the way previous generations did. The ugly reality is that the British economy has become addicted to rising house prices. Governments are terrified of a crash because so much of the economy depends on property values staying high. Consumer spending, bank stability, pension funds, construction jobs. It's all tied to housing. So even though rising prices are destroying opportunities for young people, policymakers are quietly relieved when prices keep going up. They say they want affordability, but their actions show they want stability, which means keeping prices high. What's coming next is more of the same, but worse. Interest rates will keep falling slowly through 2025 and into 2026. That will give the market a boost. More buyers will be able to afford mortgages. Prices will keep rising, maybe 2% to 3% per year. That doesn't sound like much, but compound it over 5 or 10 years, and you're looking at homes being 15% to 30% more expensive than they are now. The wealth gap will widen. People with property will get richer. People without will fall further behind. Regional inequality will deepen. London might stagnate while northern cities boom, but that won't help Londoners who can't afford to relocate. The stamp duty volatility will settle down eventually. After the rush before April and the slump after, The market will find a new normal sometime in late 2025. But that new normal will be even less affordable than before. First-time buyers will need bigger deposits. They'll be older when they finally get on the ladder, if they ever do. More people will rely on the bank of mum and dad. Inheritance will become the primary way people acquire property wealth. That's not a healthy housing market. That's an aristocracy. Here's what needs to happen, even though it probably won't. Britain needs to build significantly more homes, not just any homes, but affordable homes in places where people actually want to live. The planning system needs reform. Councils need resources. Developers need incentives to build for regular buyers, not just luxury flats for investors. Stamp duty needs a complete overhaul. Taxing people for moving home is economically insane. It stops people from downsizing. It stops people from moving for work. It gums up the whole system. The tax should be on ownership, particularly on people who own multiple properties, not on transactions. Rents need to be controlled. This is controversial, but it's necessary. If rents keep rising at 9% per year, an entire generation will be financially crippled. Other countries manage this. Britain could too. The government needs to accept that the era of ever-rising house prices has to end. Not crash, not collapse, but stabilise. Prices should grow slowly in line with wages, not race ahead of them. That would mean years of flat or slightly falling prices to let wages catch up. It would mean some homeowners don't see their wealth increase, but it would mean a fairer society. It would mean young people have hope. None of this is likely to happen because it requires political courage, and housing is too politically sensitive. Too many voters are homeowners who don't want their wealth to shrink. Too many politicians own multiple properties themselves. The system is rigged to maintain the status quo, even though the status quo is unsustainable and deeply unfair. So here's the bottom line. The UK housing market survived high interest rates because of supply shortages, cash buyers, and wealth concentration among property owners. Prices didn't crash, they're still rising. The stamp duty changes created short-term chaos but won't solve the underlying crisis. Interest rates are coming down, which will probably push prices even higher. First-time buyers are being systematically priced out, especially in the south. Renters are trapped paying record rents with no way to save. Millions of mortgage holders are about to see their payments jump as cheap fixed-rate deals end. The regional divide is widening. The wealth gap is exploding. This isn't a functioning housing market. It's a crisis dressed up as success. Rising house prices are not a sign of a healthy economy. They're a sign of a broken one. Until we fundamentally change how we think about housing, treating it as a basic need rather than an investment vehicle, this crisis will only get worse. More people will be locked out. More wealth will concentrate at the top. More young people will give up on ever owning a home. If you found this deep dive valuable, make sure you're subscribed to Property Reporter. We're tracking every development in the UK housing market, bringing you the news and analysis you need to understand what's really happening. Hit that like button if this video opened your eyes to what's actually going on. Drop a comment and let us know your experience with the housing market. Are you a first-time buyer struggling to save? A homeowner worried about remortgaging? A renter watching prices spiral out of reach? We want to hear your story. The UK property market is at a crossroads, and what happens next will define the financial futures of millions. Stay informed, stay ahead, stay with Property Reporter.